Hey guys, how's it going? Mark here from Mixit Studios. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notifications bell if you want to keep up to date with the videos I'm doing, and then hit the like button as well if you enjoy the video. I wanted to talk today a bit about my experiences, basically how I got started as a sound engineer in the music industry. So a bit about me, I started playing guitar when I was 10 years old, and I play guitar and sing and make my own music, and I've worked as a studio and live sound engineer for around 10 years and run my own online mixing and mastering business, Mixit Studios, link in the description. It was through being a musician that really sparked my interest in sound engineering, and from that I got into studio sound and recording, and then eventually got more interested in mixing and mastering. Fast forward a few years, I then got involved in live sound work more, and that led to a 7-year and ongoing career as a live sound engineer, working as a head engineer, technical manager across several music venues and doing various bits of freelance work, including Glastonbury with a band I worked with in 2019. So, I've done quite a bit by this point. So hopefully, I think the main point I really want to get across here is that we all get into this industry because we are passionate about what we do and we have fun doing it, and we are creatively minded people. Don't set your end goal and get too fixated on the idea of making money doing what you're doing. Primarily, it should be about having fun, and sometimes that means coming to the realization that maybe you're better off just doing this as a hobby. That takes a little time to figure out. Don't get too worried about being good enough and having the best equipment and being able to make money straight away. Just focus on having fun doing what you're doing, whether it's making your own music or working on other people's music. Have fun doing it. Wait till you get enough experience and feel confident enough to really push yourself out there and try and make money doing what you're doing. That takes time and it will come eventually, but it's also important to understand that this industry isn't made for everybody. Some people do make a lot of money, whatever they're doing in the music industry, whether it's as a musician or as a sound engineer. But for most of us, it's not particularly well paid. It's not really an industry you go into if you want to make megabucks. It's just not going to happen for most of us. It's also an industry where it can be incredibly stressful. There can be very long hours, and quite often your mental and physical health can take quite a hit. It's important to keep that in mind. Don't worry about it too much, of course, but just realize that you may get out there and do it, and then after a few years doing it, realize that it really isn't for you. And that's okay, and it's better to admit that to yourself and then go back to just doing it as a hobby and go back to enjoying it. It shouldn't ever get to the point where you just don't enjoy it anymore. Sure, yes, there will be some days when you're doing it as a job where, like any other job, you just don't want to go into work that day. You're not that into what you're doing, or you're stressed out, or you're not feeling that well that day. It's not always going to be fun and games, but primarily at the end of the day, you should still feel like you're enjoying what you're doing. If you're not, then maybe this isn't for you. I came to that realization myself as a musician after several years of trying to get out there making a living from my music. I realized that I really wanted to make music on my own terms. I wanted to make the kind of music that I wanted to make, and I wanted to do it when it suited me. In the last year, I've only released 2 songs, and that suits me just fine. As soon as I started feeling the pressure of having to do it as a job, it stopped being fun for me. With sound engineering, that's not been the case at all, and it's something that I feel like I am capable doing as a job, and I continue to enjoy it. Yes, there have been hard times, and there's been times where it's been difficult and stressful, but I still have the same passion that I did back when I first started 10 years ago. So when I got started, I was around 13 years old, and I had one of those little PC microphones that plugs into the mic in on your motherboard, and it's really just meant for online gaming, chat, Skype calls, or so on. MySpace was starting to become a thing at the time. Bands were using it to promote themselves a lot. And for a while, I'd kind of been harboring this desire to make my own music and record it somehow and put it out there, and MySpace seemed like the way to do it, but I still didn't know how I was going to record it and what I was going to record. I was writing a few things, but I didn't really feel like I was a songwriter yet. I'd never sung in front of anyone. So I recorded a cover song. It was a John Frusciante song. I can't remember what song it was, but I recorded that. I put it out there and I got enough positive feedback from friends and family and other people. The recording quality was terrible. It was just me sat in front of this microphone, playing my acoustic guitar and singing. It sounded the same level of quality if you recorded on a voice memo on your phone. I mean, your phone would probably sound better than this thing did, but it got me started and I got enough positive feedback that I realized, okay, yeah, maybe I'm all right at this. So I then went back and I started trying to write my own songs and started recording those, because I started recording just with the voice recorder software on Windows, which I'm not even sure if that's a thing anymore, but I was recording on that. I then started wondering if I could multi-track my recordings somehow, so I found Audacity online, which is a free bit of software. It still exists today, and you can multi-track in that. It's pretty basic, but it did what I needed it to. And I also discovered that I could take a jack cable and change one end of it to a mini jack, and that meant I could plug in to my line in on my motherboard and record bass guitar, record keyboards. I also picked up a cheap secondhand Zoom drum machine that I could play back drum patterns on and record that. It was all very minimal and none of it sounded very good, but it was what got me started. And then when I was a bit older and I went to college, they had a recording studio there, and looking back now, it was pretty basic. They had Pro Tools 6.4, a Digi 001 interface, and one of those big old Behringer Eurodesk mixers. I think it was 32 channel. It didn't sound particularly good. The live room didn't sound very good either, and they had some very basic microphones. But to me at the time, it was amazing because I had access to recording equipment that I just didn't have access to before. So I ended up spending all my time in there, booked all the hours out that I could, and tried to record my own music. And that really started me on my journey of learning how to record, and then from there mixing. So after that, I eventually saved up enough money to start buying some of my own proper recording equipment to record at home. I pretty much replicated that setup from my college studio. Bought a Digi 001 because I could get it cheap secondhand, and it came with a Pro Tools 6.4 license. Bought a Behringer Eurodesk. I think it was the same 32 channel mixer because I thought I needed it. I bought that. I didn't actually really need it, but at the time I didn't realize. I thought you needed a mixing desk. I didn't understand the difference really between an audio interface and a mixing desk. But from there, with a pretty basic set of microphones, I had a few cheap dynamics and like one cheap large diaphragm condenser, I was able to record at home, and I could record pretty much whenever I wanted. I worked pretty obsessively on my own music and recorded tons and tons of tracks and put it all out there for people to listen to. Over time, I got way more interested in how I could make it sound better, and that kind of led on to mixing my songs more and having Pro Tools and having some of the plugins that came with Pro Tools. I started to play around with those more, learn how an EQ worked, learn how a compressor worked, and eventually started mixing a few of my friends' bands' demos and built up a small portfolio of work that I'd done. Eventually, when I felt my portfolio was good enough, I started putting adverts out there, I think on Gumtree and Craigslist and Facebook and so on, and just did mixing jobs for cheap and started to try and hone my craft more, until the point where, fast forward a few years later, I then set up Mixit Studios as an online business doing remote mixing and mastering work. Back when I started it, I was okay, but I wasn't amazing, and that's just how it goes. You have to start somewhere. Everybody needs to start somewhere. You can spend too long waiting until you're good enough. You know, you should wait until you feel like you can produce professional results, but it doesn't have to be top of the line, state of the art. Once you feel you are okay enough with charging money, get out there and start charging, and don't necessarily undercharge, don't lowball yourself. Just get out there, charge what you think is reasonable, what you feel is a competitive rate compared to whatever everybody else is doing. Just get out there having fun working on people's music. Eventually, after a few years of doing this, I, in the meantime, was kind of doing sound at a few local open mic nights and stuff where they didn't really have any sound engineer, and I would hop on the mixing desk. It would be those kind of gigs where the musicians would normally do the sound themselves, but I would say, hey, I don't mind doing this. I'll man the mixing desk for the evening. So I started to learn more about live sound through doing that. One thing led to another. Eventually, through a friend of a friend, I eventually picked up a job as an in-house sound engineer for a local music venue. That was a music venue owned by a company which owns many other music venues. So that led on to me having a long career with them, leading me pretty much up to where I am today as a successful live sound engineer, having worked my way up through that company as a general engineer to a head engineer of several of their venues and doing freelance work with bands as well. If you work hard enough and you have the passion and you have the drive and you stick at it, it will happen for you and you can make an honest living doing what you're passionate about. You just need to feel like you are cut out for it and set your expectations low to begin with. Don't expect it to happen overnight. It will take time, and only the really lucky and the really fortunate have mega success working in this industry. There just isn't enough space in the industry for everybody to be in that position, but you never know. If you put in the hard work, you may get to that point, but just make sure you keep enough perspective in order to be happy just getting by, making an honest living doing what you do. So I hope that was useful to you guys. Again, this was just another subject that I thought might be interesting, giving some of my insight and experience. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video and you have any thoughts on it, drop a comment below, give the video a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.